Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of The Prop House. In this episode, we're going to try to make a base for an old Singer sewing machine. It's going to be a little woodworking, something I'm not super great at, but I'm trying to get better. So, let's get started. So, this project is for my sister. She has this old Singer sewing machine. I haven't really been able to figure out what year it's from, but it doesn't have a base. Now, these bases, I've looked up different photos of them and they're not anything like I've made. They're actually like curved inside and stuff. It's more like a cradle, if anything, but I used leftover or reclaimed wood that I used from a different project in this one. So I didn't go out and get new wood. I used what I already had. And I started by doing 45 cuts on this one piece where you can see where there are nail holes in it before. And then I laid the sewing machine on top of two pieces where I already had the two cuts and marked from there because I was gonna just measure the bottom of the machine, but the machine isn't square itself. So therefore, just measuring the measurements would not work, which was kind of frustrating. There are curves and stuff underneath it. So that's kind of where I started. I put the machine on top of the wood and then measured from there. I eventually figured out that if I used a ruler and put it up against the sewing machine and marked outwards using it, that was a good way of knowing where to cut for the angle, and from there I just had to get the right angles, the right direction of a 45-degree angle. So after a cut here, a cut there, another cut here, bam, we have this rectangle. So then I went ahead and clamped them together and I turned on the compressor for the nail gun. So then I just nailed it together. And then I test fit the sewing machine and notice that there are several areas that I have to chisel out wood. I knew that this was going to be something I had to do, but it was more areas than I thought there were. So I sat the sewing machine inside it, and then I used a pencil and went around the areas where it wouldn't slide in. And then once I had those markings, I filled in the areas with the pencil to make it easier for you guys to see, and I got the chisel in. So I realized as I was chiseling that I forgot to use a saw to make guidelines to guide the chisel and have cleaner edges. So the chiseling in this is an absolute mess. Most of my chisels broke in the end, so I'll have to get proper ones for the next time I have to do something like this. But they worked for this one. And then you use a chisel and you make a line to bridge the gap of where you use the saw as a way to have a stopping point and hopefully cleaner edges. They didn't come out clean at all for me, but you know, I'm practicing. I'm learning woodworking. It's taking me time, but I'll get there. So then it was more chiseling and more chiseling and more chiseling, but don't worry, I won't make you sit through all of it. So then I just started to saw and then chisel in the next spot. So there's these two notches on the back of the sewing machine that had to have the base cut out so it could fit in and sit flat. I think the point of these notches were for if you were attaching the sewing machine to one of those tables where the sewing machine folds into it. But I just had to use a handsaw to cut out some U's so it will fit down in it. And I ended up cutting them way too big, but you know, I probably should have measured it again. So after a lot more carving, I test fit the sewing machine and it wasn't fitting down in it, and I realized I still had quite a ways of carving to go, and a couple different areas actually. And then while I test fitted it, I noticed that there was more areas than I had noticed the first time, so I also marked those out and started carving those away. Now, to save everyone time, I'm just gonna jump ahead because it's just a lot more chiseling, sanding, chiseling, and it's not that entertaining to watch. So I'm gonna jump to the painting process. Originally, what I wanted to do was stain the wood, but I wasn't sure if I could get the paint off well enough, and I wanted to also finish this project with what I had on hand. So I ended up doing a bit of a shine black, like a black with a shine to it. So I started off by using the gray primer, and I got a much better coat on it than with the Thor hammer. And then from there, I used some black enamel spray paint, and it has a really nice shine, and the color matches the sewing machine pretty well. I'm pretty happy with how the color came out. So now it was time for the final test fit and a couple glamour shots just for good measure. You know how it goes. So I'm fairly happy with how this came out. I definitely wish it would sit down in it better, but it seems to be even most of the way around, so I'm gonna count that as a win, and it's really sturdy. You're not shaking it anywhere. As I probably said earlier on, I'm not the best carpenter, woodworker, whatever you wanna call it, but I really am trying to get better. So I'm trying to force myself to do something like this, where it needs to be nice and square in order for it to fit. Had some wood carving in it, which I need better tools for, but I worked with what I had on hand. So on, so forth, yada yada yada. I do want to say, I'm trying to balance functional items and prop fun items on this channel, so that way we don't get too much of either or. I'm trying to balance it. We'll see how it goes. Sometimes the more prop things are more fun to watch and more fun to make, but I want to also have some more of the functional items that I make because they're fun for me to make too, if that makes any sense. Well, I think that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching. Oh, and good night, Addie.